Kick-ass facts! Pew, 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 pew! Today, friends, we are going to learn about perverse incentives because I kind of love it when a dumb plan backfires. A perverse incentive is an incentive that has unintended and undesirable results that is contrary to the intention of the designers. The Cobra effect is the most direct kind of perverse incentive, typically because the incentive unintentionally rewards people for making the situation worse. Why is it called the Cobra effect? I'm glad you asked. Colonial India had a cobra problem. The British government, concerned about the number of venomous cobras in Delhi, offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Initially, it was a success. Large number of snakes were being killed for the reward. Eventually, people began to breed cobras for the money. When the government became aware of this, they scrapped the program entirely. And what is a cobra breeder supposed to do when you now have worthless snakes? Set them free, and then the wild cobra population increased. The Great Hanoi Rat Massacre, 1902, Hanoi, Vietnam. This time under French colonial rule, the colonial government created a bounty program that paid a reward for each rat killed. To collect the bounty, people would need to provide the severed tail of a rat. Colonial officials began noticing rats in Hanoi with no tails. Rat catchers would capture the rats, sever their tails, and then release them back into the sewers so they could produce more rats. In 2002, British officials in Afghanistan offered Afghan poppy farmers $700 an acre in return for destroying their poppy crops because poppies are used to make illegal drugs. This ignited a poppy growing frenzy among Afghan farmers who sought to plant as many poppies as possible so they could collect the payouts for the Cash for Poppies program. Some farmers harvested the sap and sold it on the black market, defeating the entire purpose of the program before destroying the plants and getting paid twice for the same crop. Gun buyback programs are intended to reduce the number of guns in circulation by purchasing firearms from citizens at a flat rate and destroying them. This plan has backfired twice. First in California, 2008, they offered people $250 for their guns. People were turning in worthless guns. People were driving in from other states to turn in their worthless guns. The first two people in line were gun dealers trying to offload worthless guns. Another gun buyback program had people with 3D printers printing large numbers of crude parts that met the minimum legal requirement and definition of a firearm for the purpose of immediately turning them in for cash payments. The FASTER Act of 2021 in the United States was intended to help people with a sesame allergy by ensuring foods that contained it were properly labeled. However, the stringent requirements for preventing cross-contamination if the ingredients did not include sesame made it simpler and less expensive for many companies to just add sesame to their products and label it as an ingredient, decreasing the number of sesame-free products available and creating the risk of an allergic reaction occurring from previously safe foods. The United States Endangered Species Act of 1973, although the United States weren't the only ones to do this, Canada and some European countries also did this, imposed development restrictions on landowners who found endangered species on their property. While the policy had some positive effects for wildlife, it also encouraged preemptive habitat destruction. People were draining swamps or cutting down trees that might host valuable species so they don't lose the development opportunities for their land. In some cases, endangered species may have been deliberately killed to avoid discovery. In 2005, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change began an incentive scheme to cut down on greenhouse gases. Companies disposing of polluting gases were rewarded with carbon credits, which could eventually get converted to cash. The program set prices according to how serious the damage the pollutant could do to the environment. The highest bounties were paid for destroying HFC-23, a byproduct of a common coolant. As a result, companies began to produce more of the coolant so they could destroy more of the byproduct waste and collect millions of dollars in credits. This increased production also caused the coolant price to decrease significantly, motivating companies to continue using it despite the adverse environmental impacts. A 20th century paleontologist used to pay locals for each fragment of hominin skull they produced. He later discovered that people had been breaking up whole skulls to maximize their payments. When building the first transcontinental railroad in the 1860s, the United States Congress agreed to pay the builders per mile of track laid. As a result, Thomas C. Durant of the Union Pacific Railroad lengthened a section of the route, forming a bow shape and unnecessarily adding miles of track just to get paid. And finally, funding fire departments by the number of fire calls that are made is intended to reward fire departments that do the most work. However, it may discourage them from fire prevention activities, leading to an increase in actual fires.